Hello, this is Jenny McGurvey, and I am here to share with you today my Project Life scrapbook process video for June 29th to July 5th. Now, as you can see, when I laid that all out, I have my template and my photos and my notebook that I use to plan my pages. Right now in the video, I'm just sorting through my photos, sharing what I'm going to have on the left side of the spread. As you can see, I have two 4x6s that are splitting one photo. I wanted to have some emphasis on this photo. It was a favorite from the week, and so having it in that larger format really helps do that. Now I'm going through I think it's the June Elle Studio exclusive kit, and picking through some of the elements that I want to use on this week. This week's layout is all basically just stash related items. I'm not using entirely a specific kit or anything like that. I did intend to lean pretty heavily on this particular kit, but in the end it didn't really exactly work the way that I wanted it to, so I'm only using a few elements from this particular kit. And like I said, I think it's the Elle Studio June kit, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, now I'm just sort of decorating the photos. I don't have a whole lot of room on this particular layout for filler cards and journaling because it was really a super busy week. We were traveling, and then it also encompasses the 4th of July, so I do have a lot of photos and then stories to share as well. So I'm just sort of taking the opportunity to embellish the photos as I can, using a couple of pre-printed tags and then also just some labels for a few words. Now, as you can see, I just pulled out a couple of cards from my stash. I went through my different cards. I keep them sorted by color, so I knew I wanted something that was orange because this week is going sort of like a blue and orange theme. I'm not exactly sure where I came up with that. But anyway, that upper right hand card, I used a piece of 6x6 paper from Pebbles, a little paper pad that I had. Now I went ahead and I trimmed that 4x6 photo down into two 3x4s because it'll go into those separate slots. And yes, I know I sliced his eye in half, which is probably a huge faux pas or whatever, but it's how it's going to fit into the page protector and the overall look that I want for that particular photo. So it's okay. Now in that upper left-hand photo, you can see that I did adhere that tag down. I used my tape runner, but then I also stapled it too, really more for embellishment than for keeping it down because I had already adhered it. Now I'm cutting apart some old rub-ons that I had. I believe that they're from a Studio Calico Project Life kit, and I'm going to go ahead and put that at the top of that. I'm using a tool, I think it's an Imaginist like rolling tool for like rolling flowers or whatever, but one end of it has like a round ball type head, so it rubs rub-ons on really nicely, and I like using it a lot. I don't particularly enjoy using popsicle sticks. Now I'm also using a couple of different puffy stickers from my stash. I think the orange one is a Freckled Fawn, and then the other little ones are maybe Evalicious. And again, these are just some little things I had in my stash, little sheets of stickers that this is perfect for just using a couple for this particular layout. Now I'm journaling right on top of that 4x6 that was originally from a 6x6 pad, and I have a ton to say about this particular week. So I'm being a little bit more thoughtful and a little bit slower in my journaling than I would normally. Normally it's something that I'm usually able to knock right out, but this week it was a little bit more difficult because I wanted to make sure I got all the things that I wanted to say down on that one particular card. I'm using a new marker that I got, and I had originally bought it for my planner. However, I'm not really using it for that because it sort of bleeds through the pages and the tip is a little bit thicker, and I'm not able to write quite as much with it in the small spaces of my planner. However, I really like it for journaling in my scrapbooks, so it works out nicely to have that for that purpose instead. I'm going to just finish up the journaling on this particular card, and then that will be mostly finished. Now I usually tidy my layouts as I go or my spreads as I go because with the photos being off kilter kind of drives me a little bit crazy. And as you can see, I adhered that little label. Now I'm trimming up a little foam square. I think those are 1/2 inch squares. I just trimmed it in 4 so that I could get just a teeny tiny piece so I could pop that star right up and then add the small bit of journaling right on that label. And I'm also going to just add a tiny little enamel dot to the center of that star just for a little bit of added interest to that particular card. It's a little bit easier said than done. I'm having a little bit of hard time getting it on there, but I like the way that it ends up at the end. Now I want to do something with that larger photo of my son, so I am just sort of thinking it through, and then I'm looking through my flare, and I decide that I want to use the flare on that smaller photo on the right side of my son playing baseball. So I'm looking through the stash, and these are just leftovers, things that I've bought, but mostly from kits and things like that that didn't make it onto my pages before. And I want to use that Hello by Caitlin Schaefer for Scraptastic Club, but then I remember that I think I have some baseball ones in my drawer in a different place. So I go ahead and I look for that, and then I find it. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. I use glue dots to adhere those down. They work great, and I really like the way that they hold them on. They're very sturdy. Now I'm also going to use a little star label that was in that Elle Studio kit, and then also a wood veneer from my stash. These are some of my very favorites. I use them quite a bit, not so much lately, but I definitely go in waves of how often I use those, and I just adhere it with a tape runner. Now I wanted to use that real life tag in that Elle Studio kit, but I end up not using it because I want to add some journaling about this particular photo because obviously it has some importance. So I'm using a print and cut label designed by Caitlin Schaefer that I had print and cut. I had to erase the adhesive from the silhouette mat first, then I adhered it down to this photo. And then now I'm just adding the tiniest bit of journaling, and then I'll trim off that little edge at the bottom since I did let that hang off a little bit. Now I usually adhere them down first before I do to the journaling because I need all the help I can get not smearing my images. Now as you can see, I'm finished with the left side, so I'm going to go ahead and start laying out my photos for the right side, and I have quite a few that I need to trim apart. One was that 4x4 photo that is going to go in that spot, and then a couple of smaller 2x3s that I'm going to put in that lower left hand, and then one in that 3x4 slot underneath the photo of my house. So that takes a little bit, just trimming all of those photos from their original 4x6 state. Now I print all of my photos for Project Life on my Canon selfie printer. It's so simple, especially since most of my photos come from my phone. So it's really just super easy to get the photos that I need in the sizes that I need from that. Now I have those Elle Studio cards laid out. That's what I'm planning on using. And that is that blue one on the right hand side. And then the other one is from a set, I believe from some Kelly Perky cards, maybe from Studio Calico from last year or something like that. Like I said, these are all stash items and they're pretty old, so some of them I don't really necessarily remember. Now I also need to come up with some 4x6 cards for those bottom 2 photos. So I'm going back to my stash of 6x6 pads, and I use from that Pebbles pad that I used on the last one to trim down for 3x4 for that particular photo of the back of our car coming home from our road trip. And then the vellum geotag is also from that Elle Studio kit that I've been working from. And then just adding a few little alphabet stickers to say what I need to say about this particular photo. I could have absolutely written it by hand. I do, as you know, a lot of stuff just writing it. I could use my typewriter. I can use alphabet stickers. There's a myriad of ways to handle that. This time I'm just using the alphabet stickers because I like that they say this in a simple, uniform way as opposed to using my own handwriting. Now, like I said, I need to come up with background papers for those two 4x6 photos. So I'm going to go ahead and get out another little 6x6 pad. I'm going to use a pink paisley pad that's definitely from last year, maybe the year before. It's one of my favorites. It has a lot of really fun images in it. This one has a blue background and then some white clouds on it, which was perfect for this summer day photo of my sons at a baseball stadium. Well, my sons and their friend. And then adding a little label sticker, because originally it would have been enough to not have that, but there's a story behind the photo, and so I just needed a little bit of room to add the tiniest bit of journaling. And because I wanted to write a little bit more than just one word, I switched to my planner pen because it has a really fine point, and I was able to write a little bit smaller, get a little bit more on that one particular label. Now I'm going to use some different alphabet stickers. Typically I might actually use the same ones that I used before for continuity. However, with that blue paper, I felt like I needed something a little bit darker. So I went with these darker gray Elle Studio alphabet stickers, and then I can see them a lot more clearly on top of that blue and white paper. Now, like I had already said, my sons and their friend were at a baseball game, so I'm just spelling out Dodgers versus Mets on that card. That's all that's really important, and then the little tiny bit of journaling, and it sort of says it all, and I don't need to go a whole lot further. Now, I also need to get the little period on there, which those little tiny little pieces from those alphabet stickers can be super hard to wrangle, so I'm trying to do that right now quite unsuccessfully, if you will. And I should have just broken out the tweezers, but the little periods are so tiny it can be very difficult to do. So I end up giving up and just using my pen, which, you know, if you've watched any of my videos before, I'm not a perfectionist, so it's perfectly okay with me. Now I have a few more spots to embellish still. I need to get those two photos onto a piece of patterned paper, which I'm using the same pink paisley pad that I used before, and this is from the 4th of July. And fortunately or unfortunately, this year is not a particularly theming year for me for 4th of July, as it was just a really super busy week and I couldn't really get that on its own spread. So I'm using this tiny little label just to notate some journaling. Then I draw an arrow on that label and I decide that I don't like it. So I dig into my stash and I get an arrow paper clip and I kind of layer it right on top where I drew the arrow. So you can still see it behind there, but the focal point is really more the clip, which is much, much better than the arrow that I had drawn. Now I'm going to pull out some off-white Elle Studio label stickers just so I can get the 4th of July down on there. So hopefully that for posterity, you know, lets us know that was July 4th and what my son and my husband had done on that day. And doing it in a really simple way. Ultimately, I'd probably like to write a little bit more about it, but given how full this week was and how much there was going on, there's just not quite enough room for journaling on here, or a lot of journaling. So hopefully the story will be large enough that we will remember it in the future. I've also pulled out a few of those wood stars from Studio Calico, and I'm adding those in a little sprinkly format right to this card as well. Now, as you can see, we're getting a little bit closer to being finished. I just have a couple more things I want to do. Now, that photo of the team, I'm really unsure how to handle it. I keep kind of going back into my mind, trying to decide how to handle it, but I don't seem to stick with it ever. Maybe it's because I don't know what to do with it or how I want to handle it or what I want to do with it. But so anyway, then I just add the little bit of journaling to that, another print and cut label on there, and I did not journal after I adhered it this time because I used that marker. Now this is going to be one of the last things that I embellish, is this particular photo of our home with a little tag, a little bit of journaling, and a little bit of wood veneer just to dress it up a little bit and also tell the story. So anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this video and this peek at how I decorated my project life for June 29th through July 5th. If you've enjoyed my video, I would super appreciate if you leave me a thumbs up. It lets me know that you're enjoying the videos, and it also lets YouTube know that you'd like to see other videos like this. Thanks, and have a great day.